The more you think you see, the easier it'll be to fool you. Now You See Me came out in 2013. It was directed by Louis Leterrier, who did Transporter, as well as the 2008 The Incredible Hulk movie, and was written by three people. I want you to remember that when I talk about this particular movie. It was written by Ed, Don't Call Me King Solomon, who did Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, as well as Men in Black. It's the MIB. It's the MIB. Maybe I'll review that at some point. As well as Boaz Yakin, who did Remember the Titans. He actually directed that. That's a movie I need to check out again because it was a pretty damn good sports drama, despite the fact that it had a fairly mundane rating, not rated R, really kind of shied away from a lot of the stuff, but boy, Denzel Washington was terrific. That being said, Now You See Me had a third writer. That's how you get the three writers with a movie, just in case you didn't know how math worked. Edward Ricord, who did Raising Dion, Raising Celine Dion. I don't actually think that's how that works. But this featured a fairly goddamn packed cast that was either on the rise or already well established. You had Jesse Eisenberg, who plays J. Daniel Atlas. He's one of four illusionists that are known as the Four Horsemen. Woo! We have a detective named, Dusty, Dylan Rhodes, forgive the wrestling fan in me, played by Mark Ruffalo, who really is in fine form here, and he's a really damn good actor. And we also have Merritt, one of the other Four Horsemen, who is played by Woody Harrelson, who's a mentalist. He's also a mental case, that's just the actor. And we have Henley, played by the insanely gifted and gorgeous Ayla Fisher. I always thought it was Isla Fisher. I've been wrong this whole goddamn time. Jesus. The fact that that woman was born in 1976, she's going to be in the third Now You See Me, Now You Don't movie. And the fact that she still looks that incredible, fucking ageless. Ageless since The Wedding Crashers, my word. We also have Jack, played by Dave Franco. And that rounds out the Four Horsemen. We also have Melanie Laurent, who has been in Glorious Bastards and some other stuff, and is a very, very beautiful French woman. We also have Morgan Freeman. We have Michael Caine. Thanks to my best friend Chris, a.k.a. the Durbinator, you can say Michael Caine, and it's always going to sound like My Cocaine. Thank you, Chris. Thank you very much for that. Also has Michael Kelly and Common. Yes, the same Common. So, if you have not seen Now You See Me, this involves four illusionists that are thieves that basically are pulling off grand magic tricks, taking money, and doing a lot of great things and staying 1 or 50 steps ahead of the law, even as Detective Dylan Dusty Rhodes, as well as Alana, played by Melanie, are trying to figure out what's going on. It just seems like the Four Horsemen are always ahead. Also, we have Thaddeus, played by Morgan Freeman, who exposed a magician at one point in his life and has been doing a show where he basically exposes magician tricks. And it just seems like something isn't quite right. Like there's just one more trick to be pulled, one more sleight of hand. So I have seen this movie. It has been a number of years. I'm not going to call this the greatest movie on the face of the planet. I'm going to say it has elements of fun, but it also has no element of danger. There are just so many, moments of implausibility in this, some of which I can buy, some of which sort of take me out of it. It's like a slightly less impressively built Ocean's movie, but it does have that breezy nature about it, and the cast is really, charismatic as far as just the acting in general. Now, the character work, not necessarily all that great. We don't really get that much about our particular characters. We do get a great third act reveal that I guess could be considered kind of shocking, but really kind of isn't when you, pick up the pieces. But this movie ended up, costing $75 million. It made $29.3 million for an opening. It made $117.7 million for the U.S. and Canada gross, and $351.7 million for the worldwide haul. So yeah, it was going to get a sequel, and it did. More on the sequel here in a bit. I will admit, I've seen the first one. I've never actually seen all of the second one. And the reason that I decided suddenly to post a review of this, and I will post a review of the sequel possibly by this weekend. I'm recording this very early Wednesday morning. The reason that I decided to do this is there's a Regal Mystery movie that's coming up on the 10th of, this month. And it's PG-13. It may not end up being Now You See Me, Now You Don't, but just in case it is, I wanted to basically just catch up on this stuff, because otherwise I'd be probably pretty lost, wondering why people are cheering or wondering what the fuck's going on. So, yeah, that's really it. If you have seen this movie, you know what the spoiler section is going to be. If you don't know or if you haven't seen this movie, then you're probably going to be, just wondering, oh, what the fuck? But the movie's 12 years old. I mean, so it's not like it's necessarily a big shocking reveal. But that being said, yeah, that's your warning. I'm going to get into the spoiler section right now, so there we are. We see card tricks from Atlas. We do see mentalist stuff where basically, Merritt is figuring out that there's a cheater among this couple. Woody Harrelson being a bit of a con man isn't really that surprising. And then we get Dave Franco bending a spoon. If anybody can figure it out how he did it, then he can give him $100. And there's this weird hooded guy with, that figured it out, that kind of stuff. Oh my God, can't believe this. And then we see Ayla Fisher getting wet in a piranha tank. Let's keep it clean here. I'm not going to keep it clean with her. Nevertheless, basically she submerges herself in a goddamn tank. Not David Blaine style. Remember David Blaine? That was certainly a magician who existed. Is he still alive? Anyway, so suddenly, oh my God, piranhas come in and invade and this kind of stuff. But they end up basically doing this stuff, and then they get cards, various cards, and it's for, March 29th. It's to set up a certain thing. And we basically see what's going on with, these people. We get a little bit of interaction. We find out there was a bit of a relationship between Henley and Atlas. And then basically, things work out. We have Michael Caine there. We have a weird water floor cross thing, that opens up and oh my God, it's dry ice. I thought it was gas. They were basically tasked by Michael Caine's art to take care of, to basically, take their show on the road. And they did, and now they're super successful. So then you talk to this one guy that they chose at random that it turns out actually had something to do with the, Central Republic, Paris bank thing, something or other. So Michael Caine is basically just enjoying this. They show, hey, thanks to our benefactor, this kind of stuff, because he's worth millions and millions and millions of dollars. So they give this French guy, a VR helmet. And then Ayla Fisher starts taking off layers. Just starts throwing cloth and everything. And it's like a weird, cool scarf trick and stuff like that. Oh, they put this guy in a VR thing, slam it. And suddenly, they are basically, since he's at this French Republic bank, they're going to end up somehow siphoning a bunch of goddamn money from this whole bank. Somehow, and they're going to get it into the arena. Well, obviously, it's a sleight of hand thing. It's a deal, whatever it is. And that was kind of funny. Then he had signed a card also. The card was there. The card ended up, the card with his signature somehow ended up there, and it was weird. And then they got into the Vegas arena, and everything was great. I noted, Jesus, Melanie, beautiful French woman. My God, there is something in the French water there, and I mean that with respect. So these four horsemen, we get a little bit of history with them as they're all arrested, trying to figure out how they got how they stole all this money. Jesse Eisenberg ends up somehow trapping Mark Ruffalo, in the handcuff little bar thing that they have there. And Thaddeus also talks about how he exposes magicians. And there was one named Lionel Shrike. Exposed him in the 70s. He tried the safe trick, and he ended up, basically, they were never able to find the safe. He was dead at the bottom of a river, seemingly. I mean, or maybe he vanished into the ether. Obviously, he didn't, because we find out why a little bit later on. But Thaddeus essentially knows that Dylan is completely in over his head, and he just knows that there's no goddamn way that this is going to work. So it turns out that he knew how they did the whole thing with the money, in the Paris bank. There was a safe below the stage. They had actually already, taken care of the armed guards and somehow gotten that, armored truck and stuff like that with all this freshly minted money somehow that they got there. See, that's another thing where they got it, but whatever. They lay it, it's fairly simplistic, but it's just some of the implausibility stuff. And they basically did what they did. They got the money, and then we get banter and a possible little romance between Dylan and Alana. It would be hard to resist her, but I digress. Michael Caine is having fun. I believe he also came back for the third one after retiring from acting for a bit, so good on him. And, oh yes, he also has tracking bracelets on him, and because of the frequency, now Michael Kelly and various other cops, they can find a way to track all these people. So, Alana also talks about this one deal where people they have a secret, they lock it, they put a lock on this fence by the Seine, the river and everything. There was Under Paris. That movie, I think it was called Under Paris, a weird shark one. And they basically lock it with their secret, and they throw the key in the goddamn river. No wonder that goddamn river is so freaking just, poisoned because of all the copper and whatever from these keys. But Art talks to Thaddeus and basically says, you stand to make $2.5 million, at most from your show. I'll give you a check for $3.5 million if you stop. Well, no, I'm not going to do that. And then he sets the check on fire because these two old guys are having fun. They've been in movies before together, but nevertheless. There is a trick about the rabbit in the box and everything. That rabbit was adorable. And then they show the trick mirror stuff and everything, making it look like the box had its, like the bunny was gone. And then we also see some dodgy CGI of like bubbles being formed and stuff like that. There's also this trick that Merritt had where he gathered all the people, had him 12 people and said, when somebody says the magic word freeze, you are going to tackle them like the quarterback. Kill the quarterback. Oh yes, and something else that he did earlier in his when he was being interrogated, he mentioned the word bullshit, and that, caused somebody to do Beethoven's, one of Beethoven's songs and everything, just play that. More on that here in a minute. Ayla, a giant, again, just this gorgeous redhead, this absolute goddess that she is. Moving on. So, he does mentalist stuff, Dave Franco does his stuff, and then they had everybody basically write out what their balances were on these, in these envelopes and seal them and everything. Well, you said what your balance is, but you're wrong. Look at this. Oh, look, Art has his balance and stuff like that. And it's on a giant check. And then it starts gradually disappearing and dissipating and dissipating. And they basically siphon a lot of his money, if not all his money, probably a good amount of it, and gave it to people that were affected by Tressler Insurance, all the scams and stuff like that. How did they get this? Earlier on the plane, they were talking about, the various things, like talking about, his favorite pet and his mother's maiden name and stuff like that. Security questions, but how would they have gotten that? Oh, they tricked him. Eisenberg did that, trying to do the mentalist thing, but just as a way to play dumb. So yeah, basically they did, they just basically took all his money, and that was kind of funny. I mean, or at least took a vast majority of it. And then Dylan tries to stop this and says, freeze. Oh, no, that's the magic word. And the cops decide, or the people decide to tackle the cop. And then we get a chase through New Orleans because, oh yes, they're back in they're out in New Orleans now. And we talk about the Eye of Horus. I would have just loved to have seen a wrestler just be the Eye of Horus, an Egyptian wrestler if need be. But the eye, it's like, referencing like, people that were thieves back in the day, like the Egyptian day, where they stole food from pharaohs and gave it to the slaves. A way to give back to the poor. That's what these thieves basically are. I mean, these illusionists basically are. They're using their gifts, but to give back to the people. So, you got the stuff that happened with the Paris Bank. You got money stolen from art. Now, he basically wants Thaddeus to ruin them. Thaddeus will, but he needs some time. And the whole thing, join the eye. Oh, the eye is a myth. Now they got to cover their tracks. Jack stays behind to burn some stuff and whatever, while he basically has to compete with two cops, Michael Kelly's character, Mark Ruffalo's character. Now, he can also mimic voices because while getting in a fight with Dylan Dusty Rhodes, he does stuff and figures it out and does the mimic, and stops the cops from coming to this floor. Oh, this is clear. Go to this floor. So now I can escape, which he does, and he escapes down into the goddamn garbage chute. And we see Shrike on a box and everything, in this basement. So obviously some ties to this kind of thing. And Mark Ruffalo's character even sees that. It's like, oh shit. It's all tying back to him. Because there was this one thing about this tree with this card in there. That how in the world would they have been able to get that card in there? It was all an illusion or somebody he paid off. And we get a car chase through New York City, and suddenly the car wrecks. It just, gets out of line, gets out of the way, gets in front of a bus. Oh, psh. So Jack's dead. They get the paper. It turns out to have something to do with a safe. Thaddeus also basically says, hey, by the way, hey, Dylan, you might want to watch that girl, that French girl, because why would she suddenly be here? Why would she, why are they always one step ahead and everything, trying to do this? And it turns out Thaddeus is also being played. So there's a thing with $500 million in a safe. And to try to drive a wedge between the cops, basically, she, kind of stands up for herself and it looks like she's going to slap him around. She could slap me around if she wants. I digress. You have to take a leap of faith with me, is basically what she says. And then they're in the goddamn little basement area with this safe, and they can't see it. Where the hell did it go? And one guy says, bullshit, and oh no, Common, who happens to be one of the cops, does the concerto thing. And then, the safe is caught on this truck. They're going to follow this safe. Turns out it's a dummy safe, full of balloon animals. So they've been outsmarted again. And they're basically up on this whole, they're up on the roof. They're doing all these cool light things that have been referenced with cool mirror tricks. And they basically are, they're saying, goodbye. It's time for us to disappear. They explode into some money. And it turns out the money has their faces on it. It's all fake money. Where's the real money? Oh, it's in Thaddeus' car, and it's a way to set him up. So he's in jail. And then it basically turns out they had a giant, rabbit-type safe box and everything with mirrors and stuff like that. Well, they were able to basically rob the safe that was still there, but they didn't know they were mirrors because they didn't go far enough to press on this and say, well, that doesn't feel right. But now he's talking to Dylan Dusty Rhodes in the goddamn, jail cell and all this, and oh, it turns out Jack is very much alive. He stole a corpse because apparently he was a Dr. Jerry Graham fan. That's a deep cut for wrestling fans. And a trick car that was hooked on the front of this, commuter bus that nobody noticed was just a fake. But whatever. It's fine. And that's what happened. So Jack is very much alive. it's not always, nothing's locked, and he unlocks the stuff, and there we go. And it turns out that Tressler, the bank in Paris, all that stuff's connected. And the safe. How is the safe connected? Oh, Lionel Shrike, and doing the trick with the safe, and they end up at the bottom of the goddamn ocean. So, they basically did all the stuff that they did, and it turns out that who's the fifth horseman they've been talking about? Who's been one step ahead? It's Dylan. It's Dylan that's been the step ahead. He's been the step ahead this whole time. And he ends up leaving Thaddeus in jail. He ends up having the four horsemen gather. They're on a carousel. Welcome to the Eye. He did this. We see him with Dave Franco's character, on the boat with the spoon. All the other stuff. He's in the hoodie. Why was he doing this? He talks to Alana, and it turns out that Lionel Shrike was his dad. There you go. That's actually how you do a reveal. It's not Kaiser Soze, but it's a pretty good reveal. And then they do the lock on the bridge and toss the key into the send thing, and I guess she just doesn't really fucking care that he happened to be behind this whole thing and a bunch of people got ripped off. But to be fair, all that stuff that happened with Lionel, Thaddeus doing what he did, the Tressler insurance, the safe, construction being bad, all that, Paris Bank, it all turns out to tie together. Now we go on Now You See Me 2. That's for another video, though. That will probably be of sometime this weekend, provided that the weather doesn't go absolutely tits up and everything, and there isn't delays in videos, because we're getting another atmospheric river coming. I've got a lot of movies coming up. Throughout the month, and we'll see what happens. But yeah, Now You See Me is fun. It gets a B. It's not the most joy I've had watching a movie. I do recall seeing some scenes from the sequel and thinking that it didn't seem as fun, and we'll see how the third one turns out. If the third one isn't the mystery movie, though, I may not end up deciding to watch it. We'll see. Agree, disagree with what I said? Like, share, subscribe, Twitter, Letterboxd, Blue Sky handles in the description. I'm John Rentlin. Until we have the sleight of hand again, Now You See Me, and Now You Don't. That's a different movie. I'll see you soon.